Well, let me get our cartoons out of the way. Hey, there's the real us. Hi, everybody. It is Tuesday night, June 15th, 2021. I am fresh from the UP, unpacked the car, kicked everything to the grass, and ran downstairs. It's a beautiful day outside. Pete, it looks gorgeous in northern Michigan. I can attest. I just drove back through.
It is.
John, you're looking fantastic in the West Wing.
I know. It's very nice. It's a very nice, comfortable, affordable home. Unemployment has treated me well. That's nice thing. Anyways, you are watching Histrey, or maybe listening, Histrey and Whiskey. This is the finale of Season 1, Episode 6, The Mormon King of Beaver Island, a topic that I admittedly know absolutely nothing about. So I'm going to take a side seat to these two lovely gentlemen. In fact, I'm going to put myself down here, let the two stars be on top.
The Mormon King was the coolest, arguably one of the coolest Mormons ever.
Well, I know very little about Mormons as well, so this will be eye-opening and enlightening for me. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sipping on a lovely sangria over here, gentlemen.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm actually got a little bit of bullet bourbon, neat, in my Michigan, promoting Michigan again, of course.
Yes,
along with the broadcast. And I have an all-day IPA back from Founders in Grand Rapids. A very good beer.
Oh, it's great. Justin, you're in Grand Rapids. How's the weather in Grand Rapids?
I am. It's not gonna lie, it's pretty kick-ass.
I like it.
It's not so bad. We had a heck of a weekend last weekend in town with a lot of awesome events, and Grand Rapids even kicked off like their first May of the year, which was the Asian Pacific community event, kind of for the weekend thing. It was fantastic and amazing. A lot of people eating fantastic Asian food and sweating profusely. It was great.
Love it. I have a sneaky visitor in the corner here, probably looking for his headset, I'm going to guess. But anyways, we're going to get into this topic here pretty soon. I would like to say that we are being brought to you by iLogic Media, of course. There's my son Michael sneaking around my house. I don't know who invited him. I mean,
get out of the West Wing.
Maybe Pete can come over and give him some piano lessons on the piano over here. Yeah. No.
That looks like a fine piano. Oh, and he said no.
No, it looks...
No.
He doesn't want to learn the piano, I don't think. I don't know. But anyways, there he goes. See you later. Let's get going, shall we? This is a huge topic that Pete has been eager to talk about. Justin is in love with. I know absolutely nothing about. So we've delayed a few weeks. We apologize to everyone, but it's full-blown summertime. Pete's going to be too busy to continue on for the summer, and so will I with a new job and everything starting next week. So we're going to take a nice break. We'll be back after Labor Day with Season 2. If there's any topics you'd like to hear us talk about, we prefer the Michigan-centric ones, but we'll do some stuff outside of Michigan as well. Please drop us a line on the iLogic Facebook page or right here in the comments, and we'll add it to the list of topics to cover in Season 2, premiering this fall. Watch out for dates at ilogicmedia.com, and be ready for a fun-filled Season 2 this fall. Go ahead, boys. Take it away.
Before we start, one quick thing. I really wish that we could have worked it out with we really wanted to get the special guest from Be Well Meat and Cidery in Bel Air, Michigan, Jer and Liz. Unfortunately, we were on the move, and John was in the camping area, which is yippee-ki-yay. But for whatever reason, the streams did not cross on this one.
But there's a reason why you wanted to talk about Be Well. They use apples from Beaver Island, some historic apples.
They have.
Yeah.
That are descendants of the trees that were left there from the Mormons, I think.
Right. We were hoping they would shed some more light on that, but maybe we'll talk more about it in season 2.
That'd be great.
Yeah. We'll give an update maybe. All right. Well, take it away, Pete. Where are we starting here?
First of all, as far as our viewership goes, I'm not sure how far we reach, but Beaver Island, just for a little geographical reference, is the largest island in Lake Michigan, and it's roughly 13 miles long north to south by about 8 or 8.5 miles wide at its widest point. And it has a wonderful natural harbor on the northeast corner of it, St. James Harbor, which is named after the guy that we're going to be talking about here. But it was largely vacant until about, the 1830s or so, as far as white settlers. There were very few. There were some Irish fishermen who had married some Native American women and had kind of, because of, how that would have been treated, mixed race relations, were living out on these islands. And actually, Beaver's the biggest, and there's an 11-island chain archipelago. Hog Island, Whiskey Island, tons of them. And some of the best, fishing in all of the Great Lakes is in this archipelago. There are bass rookeries, still bass and salmon and steelhead and walleye and perch. I mean, it's still is pretty much one of the most bountiful places in the.
Oh, no.
Oh, did we lose Pete?
We lost him briefly.
Oh, he's working his way back, but he's absolutely right. Oh, there we go. You back with us, Pete?
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, and I don't know whose connection it is. Anyway, long story short, just a very untapped kind of resource back in the 1830s and 40s, very sparsely populated. And so anyway, that kind of sets the stage for, our man who is actually, he's known as King James or James Strang, but his birth name was Jesse James Strang. And he changed it about the time he was 19 or 20, because this guy had delusions of grandeur, from a very early age, and was thinking, literally, had fantasies about marrying the Queen Victoria, who was heir to the British throne. Crazy stuff. But anyway, I'm going to start off. He was born in New York State, upstate, by the Finger Lakes region, which is near Cornell University, wine region now. And coincidentally, the guy who founded the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, was also from that region. And that is where Mormonism started, was in upstate New York in the 1830s. And Strang just happened to live fairly close by, not like next door, but close enough that the communications at the time would have been relaying, what was going on in the community and with regard to Joseph Smith and this new religion. So,
and people really loved the religion, right? They really embraced it.
Absolutely. And they actually referred to that region in New York as the burnt over district, meaning the Pentecostal fires were scorching that area. And it was very true because there were so many, and I can't remember the number of little Christian micro sects that were created and spawned during a 10 or 15 year period in that very geographic region. So, so they called it the burnt over region or district. And Strang was kind of grew up in that, and he grew up a Baptist actually. His parents were Baptists. He later rejected it and ended up meeting Joseph Smith after having moved to the what was then the Northwest Territory. It was before Michigan was a state. Let's see. His parents moved there in the 1830s, so right around that time. But He he was kind of a sickly child, this guy. Okay, he ends up being the king of Beaver Island, and he ends up being a state legislator and a very powerful man in northern Michigan for a period of about 8 years. Actually, about 6 years. But he grew up like this kind of sickly, gangly, not a good-looking man, not a good-looking kid. You know, like this big bulbous forehead, and did not spend much time in school, but was a voracious reader and became very, very smart and became a lawyer, basically, in New York State, and became a member of the bar and took a wife. I forget how old he was. But prior to that, this guy, and I was alluding to this before we were on the air, at the age of 15, he was having an affair with a single unwed mother. And that kind of set the tone for this guy's life. He had a real problem with women from the age of 15, and he had several liaisons or, relationships with older women and younger women as well. He didn't seem to discriminate. But
not to
that
make light
was
of
like
the stereotype, of Mormonism with the multiple wives of that particular sect of Mormonism. But do you, like, in all honesty, like, was that a draw to Joseph Smith? Was his, love of sharing around a draw to Smith, or do you think that Smith's side
was it
maybe
the polygamy that interests Smith the most in Mormonism?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, how did he like? Do you know any way of why he got involved with Smith? Was it just charisma and rebelling against the parents?
Well, I don't know. I think Mormonism in that area really took on like wildfire, like Pete was saying. Like, people were really into it. And I think, honestly, the story, I think when is Pete frozen right now?
He is. He looks a little frozen.
Okay. When Pete comes back, he'll probably say, we'll figure out exactly what interested him in Mormonism the most. Uh-huh. I know originally, like, the Mormons were having pretty good success in that pocket, but once people started figuring out and hearing about hey, are you back, Pete?
I am.
You back with us, bud? All right. I was just filling in that the Mormons in their region in the Finger Lakes had great success and were able to get a lot of people interested. But once the word about polygamy started seeping out into the rest of the country about them, their fortunes began to turn.
True. They actually, Joseph Smith, it really wasn't common knowledge as far as the polygamy goes until later in the religion. And they did have to move. And obviously, the Mormons, there were several hopscotches along the way, but the first of which was Illinois and northern Illinois. And they had a fairly big-sized settlement, about 15,000 people. And so they moved to Illinois and became quite powerful politically because they had some numbers. And actually, the city of Nauvoo, Nauvoo was actually neck and neck with Chicago in the 1830s as far as the biggest city in Illinois. I mean, this is how big this town was, and it was over half Mormons. So significant
was this
amount
in
of people.
Central Illinois?
North Central Illinois, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And a very successful migration, and they actually kind of rivaled the local militia in as far as the Mormon army or their guards or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
So they had a pretty good sized community, and that's when Strang actually met. He had moved. He had married his first wife, and he was a lawyer and just was kind of like trying to get out of, his family was there, her family was there. He's like, we got to move west. There's cheap land. We can, and I can, so he had been told about Joseph Smith by his one of his best friends, and they moved to Wisconsin, but he actually went to Nauvoo, Illinois, and met Joseph Smith, and instantly became like an elder in the church and was confirmed as a saint. And it was this instant, like, I'm hitching my star to your bandwagon, basically.
He pitched himself to the Mormons, didn't he? Like, when he found the Mormons, he's like, hey, I'm the kind of hotshot, respectable dude you need to represent you guys. Right?
And I'm
like
smarter and more educated than your leader, which was very true.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, we lost him again.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
I think Pete and his equipment in StreamYard, we've had a year-long battle.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back, Pete. Sorry.
We're back.
No. And I apologize. I really don't think it's my connection, John. I think it might be my device and or just how Apple plays with StreamYard for some
That's what I was just
reason,
saying. We've had like a year-long battle with Pete's equipment in StreamYard.
Well, Pete, we were talking about he was pitching himself as being more educated than their leader.
Yes, and he was.
I wouldn't doubt it. Oh no, we lost him again.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he should sign out and sign back in. Do you want to try your phone?
I will try to do that right now. I could try the phone, except I don't have a jack for these on my phone. Hang on. I can find another pair of earbuds.
That's all right. We'll make it work one way or the other, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's getting annoying, though, and I apologize. I know. And it's impeding the flow.
We got a good flow.
All right, so I'm going to continue. I don't know. Where was I? Strang moved to, he meets Joseph Smith, becomes an elder, and all of a sudden he's in with the gang. And
in Illinois.
All of a sudden, in Illinois, and all of a sudden, there's an assassination, and Joseph Smith is taken out by a group of people in Carthage. Well, actually, no, in Nauvoo, anti-Mormons, Gentiles, as they were called by the Mormons, because the Mormons actually truly believed that they were the lost tribe of Israel. So they actually considered themselves like Jews from the desert, kind of, very interesting. So the Gentiles came and basically, the polygamy thing, and they were also just throwing their weight around, actually, in the community. And so he's killed. Joseph Smith is killed. His brother Hiram is killed, and a couple of other guys. And all of a sudden, Strang sees this opportunity, and he forges a letter that was supposedly received, 2 weeks. And mind you, the mail, this is 1844, by the way, fast forward. The mail is fairly slow. And this is literally, Samuel Morse had just sent the first telegraphic message 2 months earlier. So there's no telegraph system yet in the United States either. So we're talking way pre-internet, right? And he had this letter that he produces that's supposedly by Joseph Smith, stating that he's having a vision. This is several weeks before his assassination, and he has this vision that he's going to be assassinated. And he has no designated leader to take over the reins of the church. And so he says in this letter, he says it's going to be Strang. And it's obviously a base forgery. Yes. And it's obviously a cheap forgery. And so there are a lot of people that go to bat, and Brigham Young obviously is one of them. And long story short, a lot of shit is thrown at each other between he and Brigham Young. Now, this is also an interesting thing. Joseph Smith was actually running for president at the time. I don't know if you guys knew this.
That's right. Yeah.
He had a presidential campaign, and all of the church elders were out of Nauvoo. They were like all over the country campaigning for Joseph Smith. And so Strang really had an opportunity to like go for the jugular, and like timing is everything in life, right? And so he had kind of a jump on Brigham Young until Brigham Young could get back to Illinois from wherever he was, and I can't remember where he was, but Brigham Young was a little bit bigger of a man, and Strang was very diminutive, very short, very odd-looking man, and although he had intellect and he had a great oratory prowess, he was an amazing speaker from all accounts. Brigham Young just had more firepower behind him, and he had more of the Council of 12 of the Mormons behind him. So that's basically what happened. And so they split, and we know who kind of won the Mormon church, but Strang kept on campaigning. Basically, he was campaigning all over the country, went back to the East Coast several times, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and
it's a good shot. It's a good shot.
I'm back now.
There you go. You left off at Baltimore.
Yeah.
Justin, I'm going to hand this over to you. Okay, Baltimore. Anyway, the guy's campaigning like stumping for like a couple of years, and he's really hitting the campaign trail very seriously. And he eventually wins some followers, and they end up going up to Beaver Island because the land is cheap. Now, in between, and I'm condensing a lot because I'm looking at the clock, and I know that we're having connection problems. Now Justin's having connection problems.
Uh-oh.
Or maybe it's me. I don't know. There are a lot of problems. There are land grabs going on. Strang tried to lead the flock, his portion of the flock, to Voree, a new place in Wisconsin, that he says the flock he's had these visions, okay? And he copied, his whole shtick was copied on Joseph Smith. He ends up finding plates in the hills, buried just like Joseph Smith, with hieroglyphics and angels appearing to him and having visions and claiming he's a true prophet. Now, that was one of the bones of contention, is that Brigham Young never pretended to be a prophet. And he actually came out and said, I am not a prophet, but I will be a leader to take the church where it needs to be. And Strang copied Joseph Smith's playbook, basically. And, the smoke and mirrors and the gift of gab, the guy just had the golden tongue. He ended up bringing a lot of people to Beaver Island. It was amazing.
And he liked Beaver Island, number one, because it's an island. It's difficult to get to. And also, the island life with fishing and whatnot allowed you to sustain yourself relatively easy. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that general trade in that area was still pretty popular. In fact, amongst the islands in that time, the native islanders of the Great Lake Islands, like the folks that were living on Mackinac Island just to fish and to live, they would get into scraps with the Mormons, like freshwater piratery and stuff like that. Right, Pete?
Big time. Yes, big time.
Which is crazy to think of freshwater pirate Mormons.
And we're talking gunfights too, Justin. I mean, like, there were, I don't know how many scuffles over the course of, they ended up moving. Strang brings his people up to Beaver Island around 1846 or so, 1845 actually. And there's more skirmishes than you can count between them and the Gentiles and the Mackinac Island Irish fishermen, who were drunk half of the time, which is, hey, you know what? I'm Irish.
Still hasn't changed today, Pete. I was just in Mackinac Island today watching people stumble out of the keyhole at 3 p.m.
There you go.
There you go.
It's a strong tradition.
But it's well known that they had a very a tenuous relationship, and the Mormons kicked the Irish off of the island, and those that weren't kicked off or kind of forced off, as far as the Mormons taking over, and really we should distinguish. We should call them Strangites, because at this point, Strang has a different version of Mormonism, and he comes up with his own book of laws of the Lord, the book of the law of the Lord, as opposed to the book of Moroni, and his angel is different now, and he comes up with these plates as well, and people in the area think he's fucking nuts, but he has this hardcore group of followers. But it's
what
all
do you
Joseph
think the
Smith
population
playbook.
of Strang's community was at its peak at Beaver Island? I mean, how many people did he have there with him?
It's believed to be around 2,000 actually by
Holy cow.
1856, which was the end of his tenure there.
Yeah. My dad's probably listening now and very disappointed in me, but I've never heard of any of this. So this is very fascinating, and I can't wait. I purposefully didn't want to read anything so I could just sit here in awe for this, and then I'm going to read some more when we're done.
I was so excited when you picked this topic, rather, and the fact that Justin knew a lot about this guy too, So even though you don't, John, I'm loving on Justin for having some of this in his brain too, and. The fact is that you, John, are exactly like most people in the state of Michigan. They have no freaking clue about this whole story. Nobody in the state virtually has any idea that any of this happened. And it's nowhere near to the apex of this story, okay? So
my father just did text me and say he is disappointed in me. So right. It's been confirmed.
Nice.
Mr. Cole, you didn't have to text your son to tell him that.
Yeah, we knew it. We knew.
I've shared this story with actual Mormons from Utah, and they're like, I don't think any of this happened. I'm like, it happened.
It happened. It's real.
They're like, a bunch of Mormons broke off and had to live on a place called Beaver Island. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to stay alive, they had to become Great Lakes pirates?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
No. So,
good day to you.
I know Isle Royale has a bunch of moose on it. Does Beaver Island have moose on it? Where did the moose come from on these islands?
I don't know about that one. That's a good... I don't know if there's moose on the Michigan islands. I think we have moose on the islands in Lake Superior and in the St. Mary's River, which I guess, I don't know, in my mind, they count as Lake Superior. I bet the Canadian ones do too.
Looks like Pete's trying to reset here, so.
That's okay. Should I keep it going?
Yeah, let's keep rolling.
All right, so I know that I might be skipping over a lot of stuff that Pete wanted to touch on, but I know that these guys got to Beaver Island, and after a while, they were able to command the seas, I guess, or the lakes, and they were able to have, where do you go when you beat all the pirates? You go into legitimate business,
sure.
And what this
become
guy,
big traders, and yeah,
of course. So this guy, he became king of the Mormons. He was one of the big things that he was definitely pro about. Oh, hey, Pete.
Sorry, fellas.
One of the big.
We were just talking about what he did after he was done being a pirate, and they were trying to become a legitimate community.
Yeah, he started getting into local politics, didn't he?
That's correct.
But I think we might have missed something. Before we go into there, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest differences between Brigham Young and our king of the Mormons wasn't originally the king of the Mormons, wasn't he against polygamy?
That is correct. Vehemently so. As a matter of fact, on record, written word, he triple dog dared anybody to not, he was that adamant.
Yeah.
And less than 2 years later,
when he became king of Beaver Island, he was like, I was wrong on that, guys. That primary issue that separated our herd.
Yes.
My bad. I was wrong. So, Gary, I'm going to need to take your wife as my wife. You got pirating to do anyway.
Yes. And not just the pirating, okay? These people basically took federal land and didn't pay for it. It was before the federal government offered. They were going to offer it for $1.25 an acre, which was like 1/40th of what they were paying in Illinois, but it hadn't happened. The feds had not done a homestead thing yet or offered it for sale. But the Mormons moved to the island anyway and staked their claim, thinking that if they settled it, then they would get first dibs on the land. And
finders keepers.
Exactly. So, but yeah, the whole polygamy thing. He actually got in on the polygamy, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, about his manservant or his secretary.
Yes, or what he described to folks in Lansing as his ward.
His ward, exactly. Her name was Elvira, but
what
they cut and dyed her hair and strapped her boobs down to make her look like a man, and she became his personal secretary, named Charles.
What was he doing in Lansing?
Well, first of all, she was from Eaton Rapids, which is like outside of Lansing, and
okay,
he was in Lansing for. Actually, the first trip to Lansing that I recall was him beseeching the state government for a lighthouse for the harbor, so as to attract more shipping business for cordwood for the steamers, and also, just supplies in general. And so that was his first kind of visit to Lansing, but they got married secretly. And her parents she was actually 16 when her parents' family joined up with the Strangites. And that was in Nauvoo. And then they came north. But yeah, he was very against polygamy until he found this young lady. And, and he started making friends with local politicians. Before he himself became a politician, he befriended, and the Democratic Party, this is very interesting too. There were the Whigs and the Democrats. This is pre-Republican Party. That came with Abraham Lincoln about, 10 years later. And so there were the Whigs and the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate and the legislature in Michigan. And most of the media outlets, interestingly enough, were all Democratic as well. And the local, some of the local state representative at the time, before Strang became state representative, was also a Democrat. And so Strang aligned himself with the right people at the right time and knew exactly what he was doing politically. And that's really how they got their foothold. And that, and the fact that he controlled the press as well. He had a newspaper and that was published in the area as soon as they got onto the Beaver Island. Basically, it was a weekly. And he also was publishing a church newsletter from Nauvoo, Illinois, that had at least a couple of thousand people reading it, I believe. So the guy had the power of the media. He had politicians in his pocket, and we're talking like 1846, man. This guy had his shit together.
And he controlled the upper part of Lake Michigan.
Exactly. Totally. Totally. And at first had some foes with the Native Americans, but then made friends with them and kind of turned them against the Irish fishermen, because the Irish fishermen were selling them whiskey. They called it Indian whiskey, which was kind of whiskey. It was like 1 part out of 10 whiskey, and the rest was water with cayenne pepper and tobacco. So they would get a buzz, and it would have fire like whiskey, but they called it Indian whiskey. And he kind of befriended a lot of the Native Americans and kind of fought for them, actually, as a legislator too.
So because when he was done being a pirate, he joined the government.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, obviously, Mackinac Island had people on it, a large population even then, and the Straits area, was there like a struggle to like dominate the boats and the shipping and the trade across the Straits?
Well, Fort Mackinac had been there since the 1780s or whatever, and it was fully staffed at that time. We're talking, and we talked about the War of 1812, the last show, or 2 shows ago, actually. So this is like 30 years after the War of 1812 had been resolved. So they still had a military presence at Fort Mackinac, and a substantial one.
So the U.S. government controlled the Straits pretty well.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
They controlled the Straits, but not, maybe that might have been where the reach ended with the guys from Beaver Island, was probably right there at the Straits. But
there were political considerations that kind of, people were turning a blind eye.
Yeah, the guy had big power. Pete, I could be wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, at one point, Charlevoix County was supposed to be what it is today, plus Emmett County, and the Mormon king had a lot to do with it. And when he fell out of favor, that's why Emmett got the majority of the chunk, and Charlevoix got just this little baby part at the bottom.
I know very little about that, but yes, I believe you are correct. It was largely political, and Charlevoix County, at the time,
which is still the supply port for Beaver Island, right? That's where the ferry is,
and that's where the Beaver Island Airways fly in and out of too. So, the township that Beaver Island was in was, and I'm not sure what the pronunciation is, but it was named after an Indian chief, an Odawa Indian chief that actually was head of the tribe in the area at the time that Strang was here. Peaine, Paine or Peaine. And that was the name of the township. And Strang, before he climbed the ladder up to state legislator, was actually township supervisor. And I believe it was in Charlevoix County at that time. But I also believe that after the split, that it would have been part Charlevoix, part Emmett County, kind of on the border, so to speak. But this is all about politics, this whole thing. And the reason that he was able to stay where he was and to do the things that he did. I mean, these guys were counterfeiting coins, man. I mean, which is, serious shit with the federal government, man. And so eventually Strang crowned himself king in 1850, okay? And he has a coronation ceremony and the whole ball of wax, and there's a secret order of the Illuminati that they create. And there's these several secret societies and secret meetings and codes. And, that's the other thing. I got to back up real quick. Strang started writing a diary when he was about 17 or 18 in code. And they didn't crack the code until about 1960. Yale University cryptographers finally cracked his code. And so they didn't decipher his diaries until the 1960s. And some fabulous, very insightful stuff about him and his sexual exploits prior to him even being married. I can only imagine.
So when he crowns himself king, Pete, does he attempt to make Beaver Island a sovereign nation?
Well, they call themselves that. However, at the same time, concurrently, he is a state legislator. And a little bit, sticky situation in a lot of respects, but he managed to balance it and to deal both people both groups at the same time, and at one point, so he crowned himself king in 1850, and that's really just for the island, for his followers, and at that point, it's still not up to the 2,000 mark. We're talking like 600 or 800 people maybe in 1850 or 1851. But he then that's at the point where he starts getting into the politics, the political arena, and they start swaying local elections because they have several hundred registered voters on the island. And so they start voting for the pro-Mormon people on the mainland who are controlling, shipping and for all intents and purposes, the local economy and the local, the local everything. He becomes a state legislator after he befriends these politicians, and they start putting not money in their pockets, but they're giving them their votes, and very explicitly for favors, basically. And Beaver Island again is very rich in timber and fishing, and economically in northern Michigan, it's it ends up being a powerhouse. So there's a lot at stake.
I'm just trying to think about people who are like, oh man, we need to deal with let's go claim our property on Beaver Island, and somebody being like, whoa, wait a minute, the Mormons control that island. Can you imagine that conversation?
A lot of people left. They left their land. They left a house that they built with their own hands because the Mormons just kind of like a fungus kind of took over the island, and they ruled the island legally as far as they controlled all the local law enforcement was Mormon, and so it truly turned into their own kingdom.
It's crazy to think of that many people out there, Pete. I mean, I'm just like Googling it here. The 2000 census has 551 people living on Beaver Island now.
Wow. So I was guessing 500, so I'm not far off. Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 times the amount of people there in the late 1800s. Like I've never been to Beaver Island, but I imagine it feels quite small to have 2,000 people in a bustling sovereign nation kind of growing there.
Have you ever been there, Justin, or no?
I haven't, but no, wait. I believe I have, but my dad has been shot in the face on Beaver Island.
That's crazy.
What?
Yeah.
So it's strange. Coincidence?
The connection is made.
Yeah.
I can see my dad being a reincarnated version of the King of the Mormons.
Wow.
That's not true. That's not true.
No. Oh, we lost him for a minute.
I was going to say I'd like to meet your dad. This all
he's a good guy.
Kind of builds up into. This all builds up eventually into a federal case. There are people complaining to the federal government about the Mormons and what they're doing, and that this guy's crowned himself king, and polygamy, and it's dogs and cats living together.
Mass hysteria. So I might have gotten confused about his ward. He had a number of wards through the years, but if I remember correctly, when he was in Lansing, somebody learned that his current ward which was like wife number 6 or something, who was
he had
very,
5,
very
actually.
young.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like the last one in the line.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, wait a minute. Your ward is a lady? She's been in the men's cloakroom many times. This isn't cool. Who is this? She's your wife?
Yeah.
What? And then it was like a big destroy anything that this guy was ever connected with, to the point where the legislators in Michigan were like, bring the feds in, erase this dude. That woman is a man, but that man is actually really a woman, and that woman's been in the men's cloakroom. We can't have this.
That I'm not familiar with that story, but that certainly could be part of it. I know for a fact, though, that there was a lot of suspicion because she traveled with him, and the convenient thing is that his first wife, Mary, they almost never lived together. They were separated by hundreds of miles. She was in Pennsylvania. Where was she? She wasn't in Nauvoo when he was there, and or in Burlington, Wisconsin, when he was living there. So he had all kinds of opportunities to have side business going on with chicks, right? So,
which clearly
but
he
the
did.
thing, but the thing is that he didn't become the United States versus James Strang happened in 1851, and it was, again, you said the warship, the first ironclad warship in the history of the U.S. Navy, sent to pick this guy up and take him to Detroit for a trial. President Millard Fillmore, basically sent this warship and the U.S. attorney and the U.S. Marshal to go get this guy. So this is like serious shit. It's like the A-team as far as the U.S. legal system is concerned, going after this guy, and so they end up going and picking him up, and they bring him back to Detroit, and he defends himself very adeptly because he's an attorney and he has a gift for speaking, and he's very eloquent and very educated.
And he's an accomplished politician. But to give broader context, the federal government at the time had 2 standing orders for military folk out in the West defending the wilderness from the settlers. And that is, hey, if you see any Native Americans, shoot them. Also, if you see any Mormons, also shoot them too. Don't let them get to where they're going. And when some of that had to do with the king of the Mormons and what was going on in Beaver Island, because to the federal government, it sounded like this guy had his finger in a lot of pots up there, and there was a polygamist cult leader / pirate affecting the natural growth of the United States and its peoples. So they're like, heck yeah, first things first, let's see if Charlie's right with that iron hull design. Let's test it out on the Mormons. Yeah. Because if we get there and we have to test out our guns on this island, well, that's okay too. But like, it was this crazy time. And wasn't there like a lot of wasn't he shot on the island?
Yes.
Before they took him out?
Yes.
And when he got to Detroit, he was like barely alive and stuff.
Well, actually, no. He was shot at. I think you might be mixing a couple of things. He was shot at, though.
Yes.
It went through his coat, actually, I believe, like his collar or something, and missed him. A musket ball. But there were skirmishes. I mean, the Mormons had skirmishes with local law enforcement, with the local Native Americans, and with the local drunken Irish fishermen. Okay, all of the above. They had skirmishes, and this is constant for the 8 years that they were on Beaver Island as his followers in his kingdom.
I just had an idea for our next topic for our season 1 opener, the Purple Gang.
Season 2 opener,
yes.
Season 2 opening. The Purple Gang. Talk about.
So I didn't think you were into Minnesota Vikings or sports, Justin, but I'm all about talking about the Vikings. We can talk about the Purple Gang all day long. We'll get my dad back on here. It's his favorite team. It'll be a great show.
Michigan has had the weirdest luck with very niche, unexpected, unpopular groups becoming the strongest, toughest, meanest, most successful people in the region. And the Purple Gang, it just reminded me of the pirate Mormons. They were thugs. They were. Like, who would have ever thought, though, that it would get that way? Compare it, 100 years later or whatever, or 60, 80 or whatever, to the Purple Gang. Who would ever think that a group of Jewish people coloring themselves in purple would be like the meanest scourge of the history of prohibition gangs ever?
Yeah,
it was almost that diabolical. Except we're not talking about rum runners. We're talking about really weird Mormons / pirate. I can't get over the Mormon pirates. I guess that's just good. What it is. I can't get over it. But like, how did that happen? And then, like, the Navy's like, iron hold ship time. Yeah. It's not like the British are coming. Nope. Like, oh man, France got angry at us. Dust off that secret iron-hulled ship design. It's the Mormons are in Beaver Island and they won't leave.
Yeah.
Set sail.
Send the Navy. I like it.
And honestly,
Let's
what is that
commit.
boat? What is that boat doing in the Great Lakes when it should be like on guard for like the British Navy or some other international threat on the East Coast, like Delaware or someplace? You know, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. But they're like, Beaver Island, we're coming to save you. Freedom is steaming forward.
All right, guys. Back on track. Let's get back here. Strang is on trial in Detroit. What's going on with that?
So he's taken. He actually goes voluntarily. So they kind of, his followers say, no, don't do it, and he climbs on the boat voluntarily, and they take him to Detroit, and he defends himself. Cool, actually,
there's no
very adeptly. You know what? The guy did a lot of boat travel. Actually, a lot of boat. Like if he had frequent flyer miles for the Great Lakes on boats, the guy would have like paid off his farm. You know, so
heck yeah.
They get him into the courtroom, and they because of his political ties. Okay, the Democratic Party is kind of the ruling party. Millard Fillmore is not a Democrat; he's a Whig. All right, and his power mechanism is all built on the Whig Party and those connections. Whereas locally and in Detroit, and most importantly, the Detroit Free Press and the local press in Detroit are all Democratic. So Strang is already being propped up by the local media. Plus, he's got his local people in power that are saying, you know, like speaking up for him, and that he's not such a bad guy. You know, we don't care if he's, you know, got 18 wives, but he's a good guy, and you know, he pays his taxes and blah blah blah, whatever. So he ends up getting off of the charges, which is amazing. And this is in 1851. And he runs for state legislator 6 months later and wins the office. And largely, again, due to his political connections. In Detroit now, he has a lot of friends and fans in Detroit after this whole issue. And it was kind of viewed as a religious persecution thing by a lot of the Democrats in the state. So that's what happens. And after that, he kind of has carte blanche. I mean, you know, whatever you're doing, go ahead, you know, as long as you're not, you know, just don't make any waves kind of thing. And he ends up being a pretty good state legislator as far as representing his constituents. He fought for, one of the fascinating things is that he actually oversaw a local scientific expedition, kind of a la National Geographic, for the area, the Straits area, on flora and fauna in this area. That was the standard reference book for this area with regard to those things, anything living, basically, you know, and geologic survey as well. For years, like 70 years. I mean, until the 1920s or 30s, that was the book that everybody used, you know? So he did a lot of really cool things, and he was a smart guy, you know? He was just a power-hungry sex maniac, basically, you know?
Yeah. Pretty much.
And he ended up having 5 wives, you know? Started off with Elvira, which was wife number 2. Wife number 1 They never really cohabitated after the whole Elvira thing, I don't believe. She kind of kept her distance and moved back with her family.
Yeah, that was done. She was done after that. She's like, I don't play.
But he picked up 3 more along the way.
That's right.
And, the rest of the story is, unfortunately, he was very kind of a micromanager and very strict, which is really funny, morality laws on the island. And there were women that were wearing their petticoats in a impure or improper, I don't know what you would say, you know, just lewd and lascivious way.
They showed just too much collarbone, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, or ankle, you know. And the husbands of these wives were given corporal punishment publicly. And they were pissed. They got really pissed. And they had already been fed up with Strang's laws and his, you know, I mean,
at that point, his political influence had waned. His command over the lake had waned. I think there was problems with food supply, and people were figuring out that he's living pretty kick-ass, and they're living not so kick-ass.
And he mandated that 10% of everything anybody owned in his flock was his. I mean, not just a tithing, but I'm talking property and daughters, maybe. I mean, it got
real ugly.
It got really ugly, and he just the friends that he had made politically over the course of that 6 years or so kind of started falling by the wayside because there were more and more reports, coming forth, and the polygamy thing again. That was a big issue, and that's why Brigham Young kicked it to the curb after they moved to Utah. He realized that was the biggest obstacle in assimilating into any area that they were going to move to, so.
Yeah.
But what a fascinating guy, and really a brilliant guy. I mean, he saw all sorts of opportunities, manipulated mass media to his will, bent, a lot of things to his will, way before anybody had ever done so in American politics or religion, really amazing.
And when he and his people officially disbanded, the Navy brought the ship back and picked up what was left of the Mormons on Beaver Island, and they didn't drop them off all together.
No,
they dropped them off separately all around Lake Michigan, far enough away from each other that they couldn't congregate again.
Very true.
The last that was ever recorded of anybody from that tribe of the Mormons, they had formed, it was a bunch of guys and some of their wives who had formed or joined a Harlem Globetrotters-esque traveling, funny, talented baseball team where everybody had ZZ Top type beards. And that was it. That was the last recorded destination of any of those people. Let's do ZZ Top Globetrotters meets baseball today. And that's that.
There is a website online for descendants of Strang, and not just descendants of Strang, but also adherents. There still is a very small amount of people who practice Strangism or his brand of Mormonism.
No!
Yes, there is. As of about 10 years ago or so, there was anyway. I haven't checked recently.
Why?
Because there's all kinds of crazy people in the world.
I do want to quickly mention that we have a tradition here of asking anybody who would like to join us for a cheers at the end of the show. We're going to be wrapping up here very soon. The link is there. It's in the chat. And just remember, if you are going to join us for a cheers, to once you get in the back of the studio, turn off any other source that you are watching us on, close the tab to avoid any echoes, and we will let you in shortly to join us for a cheers.
Indeed.
Anyways, final thoughts, my friends.
Well, really quick,
nicely done.
Justin, I wanted to. You were alluding to the end of his reign, and after post assassination, he was shot on in the dock area in the harbor, and did not die on the island. They actually he had some followers that loaded him onto a boat, and they took him over to Wisconsin. He ended up making it to Vray, and I believe his parents were there. And he died in Wisconsin, but
good.
The Navy ship that you were talking about, them being unceremoniously escorted onto, it was not just the Navy ship. The Irishmen, as soon as they on Mackinac Island, these guys that had been ousted and had been past at Strang for almost a decade, finally they heard rumor that he'd been shot, and they instantly, I don't know how many boats, but a couple of dozen drunk fleet. A couple of drunk Irish, or a couple of dozen drunk Irish fishermen came and at gunpoint forced all of the Mormons off, and that's where I get my number as far as the final tally for the Mormons. They think it was 2,000 people off of the island at gunpoint on any passing steamer that stopped by. And because at this point they had been a regular stop for cordwood for the steamers, for fuel. So a lot of ships made regular rounds to Beaver Island to pick up fuel. And so any passing ship, and within 48 or 72 hours, those 2,000 people were gone. And all that was left were their houses, their barns, their plows, their livestock. And the Irish basically reclaimed all of this land that really wasn't the Mormons to begin with, because they never purchased it from the federal government anyway. So it was stolen land, and some of it was actually had belonged to some of the Gentiles or the white Irish that had lived there before. Mm-hmm. So, but just can you imagine like escorting, forcing 2,000 people off of an island in 1856? Any passing steamer, and just a couple hundred at a time. Boom, next ship, couple hundred people. Get on. I don't care. You got to.
Wow. It was A-okay because the federal government was like, Native Americans, get rid of them. Also Mormons. That's the end of the list.
Yeah. Those were the two biggest enemies at that time. Seriously. And well into probably the 1870s or 80s, after, Brigham Young had taken that flock there. It was a good 20 or 30 years before, they were.
Oh, heck yeah.
Legitimized.
They had to get rid of the polygamy. They had to get rid of the polygamy in order to be considered a state. They're like, that's the only way.
And it took a full generation for that to happen as well. So, yeah.
What a crazy story. I'm going to dig into Wikipedia later. Yeah.
Honestly. And there's a new book, actually, really quickly, that just came out a couple of years ago. The book that had been kind of the Bible as far as this was written by a guy out of Grand Rapids back in the 80s. And there's a new book by a guy out, and I can't remember the title of it now, and I should have provided a link, John. I apologize. But
that's okay.
It has some updates, and most of the repository for Strang's writings, his diaries, and a lot of stuff from Beaver Island and the whole Mormon occupation is in the Clark Historical Library at CMU in Mount Pleasant. And the other half of it is at Yale University. So those are the two places, if you want to do any research like academically, that's where you want to go. Clark Historical Library in CMU. And
how did the Chippewas get it?
Proximity, I would imagine. And
what?
You didn't know this, but I'm assuming maybe, but CMU has a biology station on the island and has for many years. Right. As a matter of fact, my mother got a biology minor there in a summer, and that was when I spent a lot of time on Beaver Island when I was about 4 years old. So
cool.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been really fun doing these episodes. Pete, I know you originally were guest for season 1, episode 1, and I ended up just not being able to get rid of you. And so, we were happy to have you.
Good.
No, it's good. It's good. The best relationships are formed that way. It's totally fine. Well, there is quite a few people watching, actually, but apparently nobody wants to join us for a virtual cheers, so I guess we'll just handle it ourselves. It's really it's been a lot of fun for the last several months. We've been doing this, and Pete obviously is very busy all summer. I'm starting a new job, and so we're going to take the summer off, and we will be back with an all new season sometime this fall after Labor Day. So I'm excited for season 2. Maybe we'll kick it off with the Purple Gang. So
heck yeah,
I don't know.
Great idea.
We'll get to it. We'll have a lot of fun. So for Pete Kehoe and Justin, I am John Cole, of course, and cheers, my friends.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
Happy summer.
Happy summer.
Enjoy the summer, everyone.